Good day, Star Wars fanatics. I hope you're all in good health. And if you've never heard of it, and you're a Star Wars fan, War of the Bounty Hunters is a canon comic book event, or official story, that has encompassed numerous areas of the Star Wars galaxy. It's set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, when Boba Fett was delivering the frozen Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt. In the films, we see Han's departure from Cloud City by means of the cargo hold of Boba Fett's ship, the Slave One. The next thing we know, the smuggler turned rebel is now hanging on Jabba's palace's wall. But there was so much more to it between those events. So this is my full review of the War of the Bounty Hunters, the good and the bad, today on Star Wars Fanatic. Before I get started with the review, if you're new here or still undecided, hit the subscribe button now and join the growing legion of Star Wars fanatics, where I upload Star Wars content that mainly involves Boba Fett, Mandalorians, bounty hunters, and most other areas of the Star Wars storyline 3 to 5 times a week. When I hit 5,000 subscribers, I'll be releasing an hour-long video continuing a Star Wars story that will be the completion of Jango Fett's backstory. So, hit the subscribe button. I promise you won't be disappointed. Now let's get on with the War of the Bounty Hunters review. Beginning May 5th of 2021, the War of the Bounty Hunters began with the Alpha issue as a prelude to what we could expect. Prior to that, it was announced that the comic series would be the crossover event that everyone would be excited for. I didn't really understand what that meant at the time, but it was said that the 6 issues would release from May until October, and it would be a Boba Fett-centric storyline about how difficult it was to actually transport Han Solo from Cloud City to Jabba the Hutt's palace. Little did I know, crossover meant that it would incorporate so many other facets of the Star Wars galaxy, other than just the Boba Fett story. 34 issues later, it's complete. The series took on stories from War of the Bounty Hunters, Dr. Aphra, Darth Vader, the main Star Wars storyline, with Luke, Leia, and Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, and etc., the Bounty Hunters series, and some single issues of Jabba the Hutt, 4LOM and Zuckuss, Bausch, and IG-88. So yeah, 34 issues in total in this event. That's about 28 more issues than I had originally committed to, but I am a dedicated Star Wars junkie, especially of Boba Fett's story, and I couldn't help myself. Now, that's not to say that the entire story was amazing. Some was less than satisfactory. Not that it was bad, it just had moments I saw as dragging on or unnecessary. But I'm also looking at the entirety of the War of the Bounty Hunters comic series and not just individual comics or even individual storylines. I will say this though, if any of you doubt that Boba Fett can kick ass at wholesale prices, just from watching the movies, then read this series. He delivers in the scenes he's in. There's a reason I'm a fan of Boba Fett and I joined the Boba Fett fan club, and this is it. Not just because of this story, but because he has had a rich history other than his appearances in films for generations. But this story does leave no doubt as to why Boba Fett was seen as the best bounty hunter of his time. The story begins as Boba Fett is transporting Han Solo from Cloud City. He checks his prized cargo and realizes Han is not going to make the journey. In this stage of carbonite technology, it's just too unstable to keep a living being intact. In essence, Han Solo would melt into goo if something was not done immediately to improve the carbonite tomb. So Boba Fett decides to stop on Nar Shaddaa, the smuggler's moon, where he meets up with a man that can fix it in a back alley type of installation. But the guy demands payment that Boba Fett doesn't have. Boba then agrees to enter a fighting tournament to earn the money to pay the man. Boba Fett disguises his armor with temporary black paint and goes by the name Jango in order to stay incognito. Boba Fett is victorious in all bouts of the tournament and rises to champion. But when he returns to his friend's makeshift shop, his contact is dead and Han Solo is missing. An invitation is sent out by an unknown organization claiming that they have the stolen Solo, and an auction will be held for the highest bidder to obtain the frozen smuggler. This invitation went out to all elements of criminal syndicates and the Empire. In the meantime, Jabba the Hutt sees this as Boba Fett had sold Solo to the organization for more money, and Jabba puts a hit out on Boba Fett. As you can imagine, every leading bounty hunter of the time wanted to bring Boba Fett in. The once favorite of Jabba the Hutt? Yes, please. So, in a twist, it's revealed that Crimson Dawn is back and they actually have Solo in possession for the auction. But the twist is that now, Crimson Dawn is being led by Kira. Remember her from Solo: A Star Wars Story? Yeah, that lady. The auction proceeds and the Hutt Council fight against Jabba the Hutt for possession, but Jabba wins the auction. Darth Vader storms in and takes possession of Solo in another attempt to lure Luke Skywalker in to either be turned to the dark side or destroyed. Boba Fett catches Chewbacca on fire. Lando proves he still isn't 100% trustworthy. Boba Fett kicks some bounty hunter Heine and regains possession of Solo, bringing him to Jabba's palace for payment. Okay, that's just a brief account of the entire story. This would be an hour video if I went through the whole thing. I'll probably make another video retelling all of it later, but moving on with the actual review. If you're only read the 6 War of the Bounty Hunters issues, you can get a good sense of the story and don't really need the rest of it. If you're only interested in the Boba Fett side of it, that is. But I would recommend at least looking up a synopsis of the rest of the stories. But maybe you're only into the Darth Vader comics. That's okay too. You can still get a grasp if you only read those. The same with the main Star Wars storyline and Dr. Aphra. You'll get the basic understanding of the story without all the drawn out details. And there are a lot of drawn out details. For one, the actual party/auction takes far too long. If you read all 34 issues of the series, most of it takes place at the auction and shows the same events over and over from different points of view. It's interesting to see the events of Darth Vader threatening to cut the frozen Han Solo in half, but not from every angle perceivable. I think the whole auction was a bit overdone. That whole scene could have been cut down to one of the comic book series, like Vader or Dr. Aphra, or even the main Star Wars series even. It didn't have to be in every one of them. In fact, the whole Kira bit seemed to lose its edge after an issue or two. It was neat seeing her reappear at first without aging at all, but there was no real motivation given for taking Solo other than a couple half-explained reasons. The first being that she wanted to show her power in the galaxy by uniting the major crime syndicates, only to show they were already in her pocket anyway, including some Imperial elements. The other reason she gave for taking Solo from Boba Fett, she told the Princess Leia in person. She said it was so Leia could have Han Solo back. She knew Leia loved him and that he belonged with her. That made no sense to me. It was just before Han Solo was frozen that he and Leia started their romantic involvement. It just seemed like a bad reason and a ghost in the machine to explain the whole event away. Like I said, I quickly lost interest in Kira. She went toe-to-toe with Darth Vader and lived, pretty much unscathed. We know that wouldn't have happened, especially when Darth Vader would choke out his own officers for their misgivings. Why would he let her live? That was stupid to me. Another part that annoyed me was Luke Skywalker. I know he's this badass savior of the galaxy and should be revered as the greatest whatever to ever live, but man, this shows it was a long road for him to get to that point. He was so whiny that it was annoying, even more so than in the Millennium Falcon and A New Hope, and even more so than on Dagobah with Yoda. It was bad. One minute he was all ready to face Darth Vader again and help his friends. The next he was chickening out and running away, talking about how he wasn't worthy. In fact, he left his friends to fend for themselves at the site of the auction with Vader there getting ready to cut Han Solo in half, just so he didn't have to face Darth Vader. Doesn't sound like the Luke Skywalker we saw leave Dagobah to save his friends, does it? The last gripe I have is that we knew where the story would end up. For the most part, we knew Boba Fett would return Solo to Jabba the Hutt. We knew nothing serious would happen to any of the main Star Wars characters, i.e. Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Lando, etc. It was a surprise to see Boba Fett catch Chewbacca on fire, though, with his flamethrower. Not that it was enjoyable, just wow, this guy doesn't play around. But with all I've said, I can forgive a lot of it. Why? Because I think the Boba Fett, Bounty Hunters, and Dr. Aphra stories made up for it. Other than the main War of the Bounty Hunters comics, the best parts for me were some of the one-offs, Bausch, 4-LOM, and Zuckuss, and IG-88. Each had interesting stories that parted away from the auction and gave us a little better understanding of their own characters. I actually felt kind of bad for Bausch. After knowing he would die for Leia to use his armor in Return of the Jedi, he was a very sympathetic character that just wanted to be accepted back into his home society. I also felt bad for Zuckuss. He had a best friend in 4-LOM, but when 4-LOM was dismantled and repurposed, he turned on Zuckuss. Then Zuckuss felt alone and without purpose. Bosk getting his legs cut off by Boba Fett was a treat, and the way Boba Fett got rid of characters after they proved unworthy or outlived their own usefulness was what we all knew he was capable of doing. The whole story also gave us a more insight into Boba Fett still holding feelings of his father dear to him. He used his father's name when entering the tournament, and then he got outraged when Zuckuss planted a bomb on the Slave One, shouting, "This was my father's ship." Another noteworthy plus was watching Darth Vader cut down the Hutt Council that betrayed Jabba, but not for that reason. Boku the Hutt was annoying with his buff, ripped abs, and I was glad to see him go. When it boils down to it, Boba Fett doesn't play. It was nice seeing him being the Boba Fett that his reputation stood for. I just wish some of those he disposed of would have stayed dead. Another plus was the artwork and the cover art. Each issue had several variant covers, and I tended to buy as many as I could find. Why? Because I was indecisive and I didn't know which one I wanted. So I spent way too much money on it. But my overall scoring for this one, when you take the entire 34 issues into account, is about a 6 out of 10. I would rank the one-offs IG-88, 4-LOM and Zuckuss, and Bausch an 8 out of 10. And if I only scored the War of the Bounty Hunters main issues, I would also give them an 8 out of 10. I would give it a 9, but we knew where the story would end up. With all that said, I'm now locked into this story and I want to see where it goes. The next crossover event begins in December and we'll focus even more on Kira. Whew. I do hope she gets taken out before the conclusion of this trilogy. I honestly do. Sorry, I'm not a fan of her, but I do like the other stories surrounding her. Crimson Dawn should have died with Darth Maul, or just Maul at the time. But that's it. That's my full review of the War of the Bounty Hunters crossover comic event. Have you read them? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't read them, they will be released in volume sets beginning the end of this month, so look for those. Also, let me know if your review of the War of the Bounty Hunters was different than mine, or if there's something else you would like me to touch on. I honestly wouldn't mind reading them all again, and I probably will. And if you're new here or still undecided, hit the subscribe button and join the growing legion of Star Wars fanatics where I upload Star Wars content that mainly involves Boba Fett, Mandalorians, Bounty Hunters, and most other of the Star Wars storyline 3 to 5 times a week. When I hit 5,000 subscribers, I'll be releasing an hour-long video continuing a Star Wars story that will be the completion of Jango Fett's story. So, hit the subscribe button. I promise you won't be disappointed. Also, hit the like button and share the video to show your love for the hard work I put into this and each video I upload. Thank you for watching, and remember, this is the way, the only way.